excited. I think it is a note of hope in our community that we are beginning to have this conversation about what it might look like to reopen. And the reality is that I think all of us as individuals and as a community have been radically transformed by the last several weeks. And so we are going to be turning to our clergy panel to help us reflect on what we have experienced and also what wisdom our traditions respectively can offer us as we begin to chart a new path forward. So I am going to let our panelists introduce themselves. I'm so grateful to all of them for their time and wisdom. So we will begin with the Reverend Dr. Peggy Hinds.
Thank you, Rabbi Nadia. I am Peggy Hinds, and I am from the Protestant tradition. I am a minister and educator of the Presbyterian Church USA. I'm also a coach and consultant. I work with congregations, particularly in transition and with church leaders. Currently, I'm also serving as the Transitional Associate Pastor for Anchorage Presbyterian Church, a mid-sized church in the eastern part of Jefferson County. It's good to be with you.
Thank you. Okay, Rabbi Wolk.
Hi, I'm Michael Wolk. I'm the rabbi of Knesset Israel Congregation on Taylorsville Road. I've been the rabbi here since 2012, and I'm currently splitting my time between rabbi and the congregation, and spending a lot of time at home with my two children, who were very adorable when this started, still adorable, but a little bit tougher.
Thank you so much. Reverend Carol.
I am Carol Harston. I am the associate pastor at Highland Baptist Church in Louisville. It is the church, ironically, that I grew up in, which usually doesn't work for many people. But after growing up and then going away, I came back and served as a youth minister there for 10 years. And then I've now been the associate pastor of faith formation for a few years. And anyway, I also have children who were adorable when this all began, are mostly adorable still. So right now seeking to care for the church, but also care for the small congregation in my home, which is 3 young boys who keep me exhausted most days. So anyway.
Thank you so much. Imam Iqbal.
My name is Imam Wasif Iqbal. I am the Imam at Louisville Islamic Center on River Road. Thank you IAPP for the invitation, and Rabbi Nadia. It's just more of an online minister now, Imam, than in person, but still going. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Reverend Lori.
Hi, I'm Lori Kyle. I am the minister at the First Unitarian Church of Louisville, which is close to downtown. I'm new there. I started in August, and what a whirlwind of a year this has been. I don't have any kids at home, I'm so happy to say. I've got a couple of dogs, and probably a little bit easier than some of you young parents. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. And my good friend, Father Hammer, I am going to unmute you. Oh, you're good.
I was a youth. I'm Bill Hammer. I am a pastor at St. Margaret Mary's Church, which is located on Shelbyville Road, right across the street from Oxmoor Shopping Center. Much more quiet than I'm used to having across the street from us. And in my past, I also did serve a number of years as the director in our diocese's Office of Ecumenical Interreligious Relations. So I've had off and on dealing with some of those on the panel today, which is a joy to reconnect, even in this kind of virtual environment. I go home to an empty house, just about, in terms of it was a very quiet house, not being married without children. And that also has some disadvantages. I would love to have a lot more noise around my house after pretty much a day of not having much social contact. To be with all of you today. This is like a lot of social contact for me.
It is. Thank you so much. Thank you all for introducing yourselves, and thank you to our quickly growing participants both on Facebook Live and on Zoom. We're excited to have you all. So our panel for today was to begin a little bit from the personal experience. What has your congregation been doing? How has this experience changed how you view your role as clergy and how you have been navigating and supporting your congregation during this time? So what has changed, positives and negatives? And then we will have a second round of questions where our panelists will answer what in your respective religious traditions informs the decision-making that you are having and also sharing with your congregations in terms of reopening. What religious principles, moral, ethical values are you considering? And then are there things that have emerged over the last few weeks for you that you would like to keep or not keep moving forward in an ideal way? And so we will begin with Reverend Peggy.
Yes, thank you. I have the privilege of working with a young woman, Reverend Tara Reck, who is the head of staff at Anchorage and was an early responder to the pandemic and got the congregation thinking really early on about should we still be gathering. And so we were very quick to cancel things. And I think it was very beneficial for us. We've had no COVID cases in our congregation, when we are grateful for that. We haven't met since early in March in person. We went immediately to online worship, and we've been doing pre-recordings. So we're not equipped for a live streaming at the church yet, although we're working on moving in that direction. So we've worked each week to pre-record our services, and then they go up at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning on Facebook and on YouTube. And that's worked well for us. And I think probably like many churches and other faith communities, we've actually seen growth in the number of people tuning in compared to our in-person worship services. So it really has benefited us in many ways to reach out to people, including people who used to belong to the congregation but are now moved to other states who are tuning in. So that's been a nice thing that's sort of a side effect of what we've been doing. We're also fortunate in this congregation that it has a strong diaconate, a group of deacons who do pastoral care and ministry to the congregants. And they were already doing a really good job of keeping up with our homebound members, particularly those who were sick or people in need. And that has just stepped up. And so our congregation are getting calls on a regular basis from our deacons and elders. And people are writing letters, sending cards, all kinds of stuff. And we've heard back from a lot of our congregants said, I'm hearing from more people now than I have in years, and it's just it's so wonderful for them. They feel really cared for. So that's been another very positive thing that's come out of this. We have had continued at least one adult Sunday school class via Zoom, and a middle school Sunday school class. And this church had a thing called Third Friday dinners. The third Friday of the month, they would gather in people's homes for dinner. So we're doing that virtual now. People are invited to bring whatever they want to drink or eat or whatever and get on Zoom. And it's just a time to check in with one another, to have a conversation about what's going on in each other's lives and in the world. So we've maintained that kind of connection as well. So we've actually, I think, have done a really good job of maintaining a sense of community in our congregation. And also with our partners around us. We are right next, if you're not familiar with where Anchorage Presbyterian Church is, it is right in Anchorage. And so we've always had a historic connection with them, and we're maintaining that. We've got members who are making masks for the residents there. We are also continuing our connection with Eastern Area Community Ministries. We supply them with food, money, that sort of thing. We've been able to maintain that. A new one that we've taken on is the food pantry for Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary. We have students there who are stuck there They can't go home. And so we're providing for the pantry there as well. So a lot of positive things have come out of this. All the staff are working from home, of course, like other places. We maintain regular contact with each other via text, email, phone call, etc. And we are providing 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, midday prayer on Facebook Live. Our minister of music does what he calls Hymns of Comfort, 2 days, Tuesdays and Thursdays, Facebook Live. And we're getting ready to start a children's Facebook Live gathering this next week. So a lot of creative and innovative ideas have come out of this. We just put into place a task group to work on reopening. Did you want us to continue with that at this time?
I think that's perfect for now. Thank you so much.
Okay, all right. I will talk about
We'll
that
come back
later.
to you about that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Rabbi Wolk, can you share a little bit about how your congregation has handled this transition and you yourself?
Sure. So it feels like it was a lifetime ago that we were having the discussions about closing the synagogue, but really it was just in early March. This was less than 2 months ago, early to mid-March. And I'm sure other people on this group will agree that one of the things about being a clergy person is that you're connected to clergy all over the country, and you hear what they are going through. So in Kentucky, COVID hit us a little bit later than some other places, especially New York. I'm from New York originally, so my parents are there, and I have many friends there. And I was seeing on Facebook and other means what their synagogues were doing, that they were canceling services and closing their buildings. Probably at least a few days, maybe a week or two before many people in the congregation saw it happening. We're really aware of the scope of the situation. So our initial conversations were not particularly easy, because here I was as the rabbi coming to the congregants saying, let's close our building. Those were difficult conversations. Now, as I said, less than 2 months later, it's, this could have been a different lifetime that we were talking about this. Jews traditionally pray 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening. And the way that works at many synagogues is that we have 2 daily services. We call them minyans. A minyan is a prayer quorum of 10 adult Jews. We usually meet in the morning and in the afternoon when we do the afternoon and the evening service. And the first day that we didn't hold our daily minyan or any service was a Monday. And social media is, I'm comfortable with social media. I don't particularly like being on camera, but I thought that I couldn't let the building close completely. So before we had a plan in place, I turned on my Facebook account and went into the Knesset Israel page and just stood in front of the camera and led the morning service. And I left out some of the parts that we would only do with 10 adult Jews, with the minyan present. And this has become the custom every day. And now we have this as one of our daily services. Join Rabbi Wolk for morning minyan, 8:30 at the Knesset Israel page, Sunday through Friday. In the afternoons, we meet over Zoom, a group like this. And that has the advantage of being able to interact with each other. On Facebook Live, it's one direction. People are just looking and listening to me. Maybe they'll comment. Zoom, we're able to speak to each other. We have to play around with muting ourselves and not trying to sing together. That's particularly challenging. But we're continuing to meet every day. This past Saturday, Shabbat is the center of the week for Jews. We were not doing anything on Saturday morning until this past week, and that's because traditional Jews don't manipulate technology on Shabbat and holidays. So I stay away from my computer, on my cell phone and my iPad, unless there's an emergency from sundown on Friday until sundown on Saturday. And as this situation continued to unfold and I was spending more and more time in front of my computer and my other screens, I really felt that I needed Shabbat to step back and to get away from the technology and to be really present with my wife and my kids, who physically sharing a space with, but a lot of the time was mentally not really there. But together with my congregation's leadership, we decided we were going to have our first Zoom Shabbat service this past Shabbat, because really this is going on longer than we had anticipated. And the more time we spend away, the harder it will be to come back. So for me personally, that means it's violating the way that I've observed Shabbat my entire life. But we have a category in halakha, in Jewish law, an idea called shat hadechak, time of danger, an hour of danger, where we can invoke some temporary changes to halakha with the idea that we're doing this to preserve the greater system. And I really worry that my congregation is in danger of not ever having a Shabbat morning service again if we allow this to go on. So it was actually very successful. For me, it was a great, it felt good to get dressed up on Saturday morning again. And even though I'm standing in front of a computer, I came into the office and led, together with my cantor, our congregation in prayer. And I think it was appreciated by the congregation. So we are going to do this going forward. Again, personally, it posed some challenges. How do I explain this to my children, especially my 3.5-year-old daughter, who is watching too much TV at this point and doesn't do that on Shabbat? And how can I explain to her that her father is now standing in front of his computer on Shabbat, something which I would not do? In terms of caring for our congregation, we had some wonderful members of the congregation who have stepped up to assist with pastoral care. And we put together a phone chain so that every member of the congregation got a call from somebody else, whether it was a clergy or a staff person or another congregant, just checking up on them. And we've tried to make these calls about once every 2 weeks just to stay in contact with people. And what we've seen is, first of all, people very much appreciate the outreach. I would say, thank God, we haven't dealt with too many serious crises yet. As I mentioned at the beginning, I think the longer that this goes on, the more likely we are to face more serious crises. One of the strangest experiences of this was Passover. And Passover is very much a family holiday. When we come together for the Seder on the first night of Passover, on the second night, the ritual meal of retelling the story of the Exodus from Egypt. And at Knesset Israel, we have a very large communal Seder every year. Probably close to 200 people come together the first night, which obviously we could not do. And we were very worried that many people would not know how to put on a Seder on their own. And some people will be alone in their houses, and that's not how you want to spend Passover. We Facebook Lived our Seder from our house. It was the 4 of us. And during the Seder, it felt like a total debacle ritual, while my children were blissfully unaware that they were being joined by many other people watching them, and how much they appreciated it. So it was the right thing to do. I hope I never have to do it again, but it was certainly an interesting experience.
Thank you so much. Reverend Carol, if you can share a little bit about how your congregation has responded. Thank you.
Yeah. So much of what you all have shared is the same for us. Trying to provide these virtual ways of connecting. We also have ministers who come on every weekday from our staff who offer something at 10. We have different Zooms for children's ministry and youth ministry, young adults, and the choir, and all of these things. But a few things just to note. I think for Highland Baptist, relationship is so important. And so for those who have been connected to the congregation, but as some of you may have said, moved away, or maybe they haven't been as active, we have heard from them that they have loved all of these virtual options, that they are feeling more connected, and it is nurturing them at this time, and that's beautiful. I find those that are really connected, they're a part of a Bible study class that meets on a Zoom or things like that. They're making those own connections on their own, as well as us as ministers reaching out and such. The people who I really worry about during this time in our congregation are sort of those in-between people, the people who maybe were newer to our church and hadn't yet made it into a Bible study, so they're not on a Zoom, that kind of thing. It's just that dichotomy of the fact that on the one hand, we are open and accessible to so many people, and yet on the other hand, we miss those intimate day-to-day, small talk in the hallway, calling somebody by their name when we see them in the hallway, and that kind of interaction that we really lost, or have lost in this moment. I realize how much we are scattered everywhere. I feel scattered. I feel scattered from the rest of our staff. We meet by Zoom. Scattered in the fact that I'm working from home in the midst of NTI, JCPS work and all of those things. But on the other hand, we've always been scattered, right? I mean, we gather in a building, but our people are all across the city. That's always been the case. So I just feel that more. And also I will mention that we're trying to pray for people a lot in their vocations, in sort of where they are, our medical professionals, we have 1 million therapists and counselors who are doing telehealth, all of these type of things, and think about how our people are serving the people of our city in their vocation in this moment, while also remembering those who are isolated, whose health is more fragile, who aren't on the internet, who aren't on Facebook when we're doing everything on Facebook. So and as clergy, we feel like we've all become televangelists, which we do whether we wanted to or not. So anyway, that's what I'll share.
Thank you so much. Imam Iqbal, if you can share a little bit from your perspective.
Thank you, Rabbi. One of the things, for myself personally was, or is, I have never been so social online, when it comes to Facebook, when it comes to Twitter. I don't have any of those accounts. Actually, I might have Facebook, but I haven't logged into it ever. So I get all these, notifications, but I've never actually logged in once it was created by one of my, when I was with the youth, they made one for me. And so it's been very difficult in the sense that I'm used to that, interaction, one-on-one, face-to-face, in person. And that's what I, strive off of. That's what I lived off of when it comes to the social aspect of my life. And now it was just like, for me, I took it, I think, a little bit more harder than others, as a lot of people have that online presence. So, you're still attached to some extent. And I feel like I had to do a little bit more. And I'm still, Rabbi, we had this talk. You still have to build up to it, right? I was still, still thinking about how I'm going to do this. And it's always been something, new to me, and still adjusting to that are there. We can look at all the, things that the ministers and rabbis have said before us. We have more access to people, right? We are people that may have never come to the mosque, may have never, or the timing didn't work, they were working or whatever else. It gives them an opportunity to link with not only, like myself or other imams of the city. But the other thing is also that we have access to so many more imams and scholars now, because, even though we may be, doing a program in our mosque, but we can invite someone that's, sitting in Canada or sitting in Florida, right? And make it part of our community, our program, and introduce different scholars and imams to our congregants. And one of the other things is, as a Islamic Muslim community here in Louisville, because we're not so many, we always try to work together in, our Eid festival and those kind of things. And we always try to, do it unified. And this gave us that opportunity as well, right? Even though it was a crisis, as we're going through, a different, unique time, difficult time as well. So it gave us the time to get together and even when it comes to the closure of the mosque, which, we did at a very early time, I did reach out to not only in our community, the Islamic community, but even the other faith traditions to see what they were doing. And really, I think it brought us more together as a community as a whole. And even in the Islamic community, I know we started doing, our Friday services online, and we started sharing that platform. Instead of every mosque pulling their own, we said, hey, let's just get all of our mosques to focus on one, so that way, different congregations can hear different speakers and different programs. And the hardest hit is the fact that we're in Ramadan, and as many of you know, this is our most spiritual holy month of the year. We are fasting. I'm fasting. We fast from morning sun, before sunrise till sunset, And because it's still not that bad, because when it was in June and July, they were extremely long. So it's like a side point. It's good when quarantine during Ramadan because you can't eat, So it's like, all right, at least you can control that without, religiously, without having to be self-disciplined on what we eat and how much we eat. So, but nevertheless, this was, I think this is where it hit all of us the hardest. Is the fact was this was the month where every mosque, it doesn't matter where, I guess, in the world, it's at the highest attendance, highest, when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to activeness, and, just because not only are we fasting, we're breaking the fast together, and then we have special prayers that go on for a decent amount of the night. So, it actually makes us appreciate, and I think that's what it is, a lot of times we think, oh, we have the mosque, okay, we go through, maybe pray, be there for a little bit, eat the food and leave right away. And, those kind of things. And I think this is an opportunity for all of us to see what we had and what we're missing, and I think hopefully as things get better and things open up, I'm hopeful that people will come back with a different renewed zeal and love for places of congregation.
Amen. Thank you. And I'm going to actually use this as an opportunity to put a plug in for two things. One is you'll see on our website and our Facebook page, we've got the information about the drive-through break the fast for Ramadan that is available for students or people who are in need. And then we are going to be hosting with our Muslim community and dinner to break the fast, and that will be on March 14th, I believe. Yes, March 14th, Judd? Yes.
May, probably, right?
May, thank you. See, you are correct, Rabbi Wolk. It feels like just yesterday it was March. I can't believe it's May. Thank you so much. But so we hope that you will, this is another opportunity for people to join the Muslim community. They'll be connected with different families, Muslim families here in Louisville, joining their tables virtually and bearing witness to them as they observe their evening prayers. So thank you, Imam Iqbal, for sharing that, and thank you to the entire Muslim community for partnering with us. Reverend Lori from First Unitarian Church, if you want to share a few thoughts on how your congregation has transformed.
Sure. We were lucky in that we were televising all of our services every Sunday via Zoom for years before this. So we had a running start. And so when this befell us, I think March 15th was the first week that we about an hour making a little like a movie set with, okay, put the plants, then make everything just so, and what's in the frame and who's stepping where and don't step in front anyway. So we've really tried to perfect it, and it's been quite an experience for the congregation, some of whom, a lot of whom are a little bit older, and some of those who are not super tech savvy, to be pulled into this, and they've been very good about that, but it's been a stretch for all of us. As a minister, I've tried, it has been a switch about how you do ministry. For example, I have been writing love notes to the congregation. I want them to get something from the church every single day. So we have things that go out a couple times a week, and then of course on Sundays there's the service. But about 3 or 4 days a week I'll send a love note, which is some kind of a spiritual reading or a poem that I'll embellish on a little bit with a bit of a message. But just as others have mentioned, every day that there be something that they are receiving from me or the church. Also, a lovely thing that's different for us now is that the folks who are not online, haven't been and still aren't, continue, because they're homebound, mostly elderly, continue to be pretty cut off. So we came to our senses because of this. So a good thing that has come out of it is we send packets every week now that includes all the service elements, the sermon, the love notes, the kind of online newsletter that we do. So all of the materials that they've missed, they now get in living color. These chunky packets go to their houses, and they just love that. And I'm embarrassed that it took me until a pandemic to think to do this, but it's a good thing now. Another thing to speak of is the pantry. We have next door to us is Calvary Episcopal, and from there a food pantry is operated. And I don't know how many of you are intimately involved with pantry work and work with the unsheltered, but it's a tough time now, and it has just required a focus as if it wasn't before, but it's certainly on steroids. Sign up, reserve a day for your giving to concretize that effort, because those kinds of efforts are required now to keep up these kinds of ministries, because it's absolutely tough, and the most vulnerable among us are more vulnerable yet. So I'm preaching to the choir, but these are things that are happening at our church. The only other thing that I'll speak of that we haven't spoken of on this call yet is the issue of stewardship, canvassing, the financial ramifications. Yes, I figured I would see heads nodding. It's a big deal, because in all of our faith communities, there are people who have been adversely affected financially, and are simply unable to give as they have before. In our congregation, it is stewardship season now, so we're knee deep in it. The numbers aren't exactly what they usually are, but of course the bills, for budgeting purposes, are going to remain the same. And what do we do about that? And while that's a challenge and very real and not so welcome part of this, it's also been beautiful to see the congregation come together in this way too. As I've said it, like you hear Boston Strong or whatever strong, well, First You Strong, we are going to get through this. And the people who can give more, please do now. And the people who can give more now and not so much later in the year, so that people who can't give now but might be able to give 6 months from now, do that. We'll carry you. We're all in this together, and there's just a very strong sense of community, even as we struggle financially or are preparing to be in a hardship in that way. So it's been lovely to see these beautiful things come out of these trying times.
Thank you so much. Father Hammer.
Yes, I get the enviable position to be able to basically build on everything else that's been said, and certainly acknowledging a lot of the suggestions and practices we've also tried to implement. I was struck when Imam Iqbal mentioned about Ramadan, but also Passover and Easter have all fallen during the same time. And while Ramadan does move during the calendar year over time, over years and years, it does line up right now. So all of us are having major celebrations where there would normally be huge numbers gathering together. And we've all gone through that experience together, missing our people, missing being with our people. And that's one of the things that's been kind of a carry away for me too. We did not have a practice of doing online or streaming of our service, so Sunday Mass or weekday Masses, and we've begun that practice. One of the things, we're part of a much bigger network of decision makers, and so we had to follow some directives that came from the Holy Father, Pope Francis, that during Holy Week, for us, we had to do live streaming if we were going to do the service, given the very nature of the way those are celebrated. But otherwise, throughout the time, we have been doing some taping and posting. So that's been something we've done. And one of the things we've done just the last several weeks, we ordinarily had a children's focused service every Thursday throughout the school year. And so we've been doing that live streaming on Facebook, but it is set up where there is interaction. So I pose questions to the children who are watching and to the parents maybe, And I've been getting direct feedback throughout that service, and that's been really fun from my part to be able to build on that. So that's something that we do just one day a week. I don't think I want to open up my Sunday service because there's so many participating. But the weekday children's service has been a special joy, and that's something that's developed just in the last 2 weeks. But my biggest longing or loss has been not able to directly access, particularly for pastoral care, those who are dying. I would ordinarily be there, of course, any time of day that might be. Some of the local hospitals have allowed pastoral visits, particularly near death, for non-COVID patients, but some of the hospitals haven't even allowed that. Again, so that's been one of the biggest losses and kind of pains I've experienced, is not being able to provide direct pastoral care. I applaud, I know many of the nurses and respiratory therapists, people like that, who are spending long hours with the dying and providing true, genuine pastoral care. But it's something when you're a pastor of a congregation, not go yourself, you'll be present, or a member of your ministry team to be present. So that's one of the losses or the longings that I have personally felt. I have a number of funerals over these months, over this past month and a half, oftentimes a couple of weeks, and to try to work with those families through that grieving process has been extremely difficult. I've only had to deal with 2 COVID-related deaths. Most of them have been just natural causes, but it's still the limit on all of us. And as was mentioned too, trying to reach out to those who are homebound, those in nursing homes. We have a regular outreach by phone to those, but our internet outreach has been limited in those cases where our members have just only flip phones. I mean, that is the phone they use, is a flippy. And so there isn't access to them through the internet. There isn't access to them except by those phone calls. And we do try to reach out in a variety of ways. And the larger pastoral team that I'm a member of has been doing a lot of phone calls and trying to do Zooming and things like that. So all those lessons are somewhat new to us. And, but it's been a blessing and a challenge. And to kind of go through all this together as we have here, how we're all in this together, that's for sure.
Thank you so much. So now I'm wondering if each of you would feel comfortable in, I know we can't summarize our religious teachings in 2 to 3 minutes, but if there's one principle in particular that you feel would be helpful from your unique religious tradition to share as we consider what we should be thinking about moving forward. Rabbi Wolk, you did already begin to touch upon one. I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to share, but we're going to start first with Reverend Peggy, because I'm trying to stay with our order. So Reverend Peggy, please.
Thank you. Yes. I just want to share a couple of verses of scripture that have been guiding our thoughts as we think about reopening, and not so much the timing of when to reopen, but how we reopen and how we do all of this. The first scripture is from 1 Corinthians chapter 10. It says, all things are lawful, but not all things are beneficial. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. Let no one seek their own, but the well-being of their neighbor. That to me speaks volumes about how we approach opening our how our primary responsibility, our primary call as Christians is to care for our neighbor. And that leads to the second scripture, which is the greatest commandments. That when Jesus was asked, what is the greatest commandment? Love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So those are our guiding principles, to put them sort of in a nutshell by using scripture, is that however we do this going forward, it's imperative that we build people up and that we care for those people around us. It's not just about having people in the pews or money in the offering plate, but it's about building one another up and holding one another in God's love. So, but in a nutshell, that's kind of where we are theologically as we approach
Thank you
this.
so much. Rabbi Wolk?
So I'm sure many of the other people on the call share the same feeling when you heard that the governor announced that religious organizations could reopen. I think it was May 20th. And you think to yourself, there's this date and it's coming, and it's 15 days away right now, and that's so exciting, and we can get back to normal. You have to remind yourself that it's not going to happen that way. And we certainly turn to our individual religious traditions for guidance. And for Jews, there are a number of different principles that we are invoking a lot these days. And it's just interesting that they're principles that we've always learned about, we've always studied, but most Jews have never really had to invoke them in a serious way where it mattered. And first on that list is the idea of pikuach nefesh, of preserving life. The idea that Jews can violate any of the mitzvot, any of the commandments, in order to protect the life, to protect whether it's your own or whether it's someone else's life, because the value of life takes precedence over fulfilling that commandment. We've learned about this when we learn about martyrs in the Middle Ages or during the Holocaust. Very few Jews have ever had to invoke this principle and say, we're not going to live our lives the usual way because we could be risking our lives. Another principle that's related to that is sakanat nefashot, similar idea, endangering our health. And really these two principles are reminding me to take everything very slowly and to think about how my congregants would be affected by anything that we do. The line that I've been repeating comes from one of our national organizations. Just all the national organizations are giving us advice. Very well written papers addressing topics from scriptural and Talmudic bases. But the bottom line that we've heard is that synagogues should be among the last institutions to reopen, not the first. So even if we can, similar to what Reverend Heinz said, we should not. Final principle that I'll mention to another, and that's true for all Jews, and we know that's true for all people in the world. Our health right now is dependent on us, and our behavior affects everybody else. And it's easy to just look at that date, May 20th, and it's coming, and I'm going to do what I need, but recognizing that everything that we do has an effect on everybody else around us. It's an enormous responsibility, but it's one that I think we are all learning to take a lot more seriously at this point.
Thank you, Rabbi Wolk. Reverend Carol.
I echo so much of the things that you all have said. One thing to name is, as I begin to think about what this reopening looks like, trying for us to claim that worship is open online, to not talk about reopening the church as if the church was closed. You all named all the things we're doing. We are not closed. We're not on vacation. We are working hard. And so to emphasize in language that worship is open, accessible for all people online. So to name that what we see in Jesus is that Jesus, for us, always chooses the person over the principle, always chooses people instead of some religious custom. And that therefore we have to choose the health and well-being and wholeness of our people. We also recognize, we've been reading a lot from the book of John in the lectionary, and Jesus's all of his I am statements, that our faith is fully what it is, and that even in a moment when we're not gathered together, that Jesus didn't tell us actually, your salvation depends on you going to the church. Now, I know that there are a lot of Baptist pastors through the years who have said that for you to be saved, you've got to have that bottom in a pew. But our faith tells us that who Jesus is, in that conversation with the woman of Samaria from Samaria at the well, the debate about what mountain we're going to worship on. And Jesus says we're going to worship in spirit and truth, and that therefore we do not need to be as concerned about getting everyone back in that building too fast. At the same time, all of Christian community is so essential in the gathering. All the good stuff happens when we're together. We pool our resources to care for those in need when we're together. We mourn together. We seek justice together. We rejoice together. We eat together. We encourage one another together. I think of the Hebrews verse, don't neglect to meet with one another, right? Provoke one another on to good deeds. And so it's that tension of the fact that we have to care for our people over the custom of getting everybody back in that pew. And therefore, that means that, we have no date of when we are refilling our pews. We are beginning to come up with a plan. But as a Baptist, we don't have any organization telling us what to do. There are days I wish there was, and there are days I'm so delighted that we don't. But what it means for us as a Baptist church is that we are working together as a staff on Zoom to figure out, how do we do this? How do we seek to love and seek the health and wholeness of all people, while also knowing that at some point we're going to have to take that difficult step of welcoming as safely as we can people back in the pew. How do we both set us up for success, but also know we can't control outcomes? And that's just difficult, but most of our faith is lived in uncertain times. That's the name of the game. And so trying to love God, love people, know that the church is open and worship is open, and that we don't have any answers today.
Thank you. I saw a couple of hands clapping when you said, let's not talk about reopening because we've been open. So thank you for that, especially Imam Iqbal, if you feel comfortable sharing a little bit from the Muslim tradition.
Sure. Talking about the May 20th date, our Eid festival, the end of Ramadan, is estimated to be around the 22nd, 23rd. So everyone was like, hey, it's perfect timing. And, we get 5,000-6,000 people in the convention center. So it's not going to happen. It's just people are obviously really looking forward to, and which I was talking about, the appreciation for what we, what we had, right? So, but once again, right, you have the aspect, and I'm answering this to the community where it's like وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, where you have you have to have trust in God. He will take care of us. He will protect us. But at the same time, I mean, you have the verses that talk about doing, taking care of yourself. Yeah, you have to trust God. There's no question about it. But at the same time, as Prophet Muhammad said, that may peace be upon him, that tie the camel and then trust God, right? You don't just let the camel go and hopefully it doesn't wander off, and so it's the same concept. That's one of the struggles, like where do you balance that? Because very clearly in the Quran talks about وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. If you kill someone, it's as if you're killing all of humanity, and if someone lives due to you, it's as if you're saving. If you save a life, it's as if you're saving all of humanity, and it really goes to what we see today. And I mean, once again, it's hard to see exactly when and how we are going to let the congregation back into the mosque. One of the good things that's been going on is we've been in communication with all the other mosques, at least the bigger ones in the city. So we're on the same page, because what's the worst that can happen? One place starts opening doors and everyone just starts rushing into that place, right? And we understand it is the holy month. It is the time that we want to meet and greet and be the place of in the house of worship, but this is not something that we can take lightly, and we have to find that balance. And even when you do end up opening those doors, it's what protocols will come into place, right? We talk about even it's interesting because we look at all these protocols and guidelines that we get from our governors. I live in Indiana, and over here it's like, hey, everyone can start getting together from this Friday. I was like, wow. So it's like, if I had a congregation here, technically we could gather this Friday. And I was like, that's a nice thing to think about. And over there, where in Kentucky, because in Indiana we actually have like 4 times the amount of cases in Indiana, and yet when you look at so it's not really about these guidelines or protocols that we were looking to, but really, what is the best way? And we know our congregations, we know what guidelines are going to be followed or are not going to be followed, and so on and so forth. And based off of those things, we're hopeful down the line someone will be able to open their doors and come back to somewhat of a normal routine that we used to have.
Thank you so much. And I want to make sure that we have time for Reverend Lori and Father Hammer to speak, but I also want to remind everyone that we can join the Muslim community in celebrating on Iftar dinner on May 14th. Just connect to our Zoom and we will connect you. So, Reverend Lori.
Unitarian Universalism, there are 7 principles, and the 4th one is a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And we are certainly going to be exercising that regardless of May 20th or whatever arbitrary date, to be figuring things out for ourselves. We also operate under congregational polity, so every particular congregation would make their own decision about reopening. And I can tell you that so far I haven't talked to one Unitarian Universalist who has said, yeah, May 20th, we're going to be there. It's all like, wow, that seems really early. And to echo what Rabbi Michael said earlier, our 7th principle is a respect for the interdependent web of all of existence. You know, it's not just for us, but for the larger community. We're all interconnected, and we're going to be taking our time with this because of our love of people outside of our congregation as well.
Thank you. Father Hammer.
Yes, I think in making a moral decision, I do think the decision to come back into worship and community is also a moral decision, how to time that. And oftentimes our principles for making moral decisions is a blending of a number of things. Certainly faith, scripture is one source we go to. Another is human reason and science, but also the third one is consulting the community. It's not making moral decisions because I think it's right, or I think this is the loving to do, but you test that against other people's good judgment to make sure it is a well-grounded moral decision. So in this particular context, we go forward. I know we are part of a much bigger congregation in terms of the Catholic Church, and we do get directives, guidelines from the Archbishop, and he has got a process in place to consult with a number of pastors this coming Friday about how to go forward. So seeking advice, counsel from others, and that's what we're doing today. But also premises that God made us and gave us the gift of reason. We all are family. We're all God's sons and daughters, as we would any member of our own family. And finally, the gift of reason, we do need to be in dialogue with science. You know, we do need to learn and respect what science can teach us, because God gave us that. God created the world, science is all part of it. So to bring that whole kind of all that into balance and making the best decision. And we will begin, I'm sure, with some toes in the water starting around the 20th. But I can't see us, you know, the church being wide open. That would not be safe for anybody, opening up everyone. But I do worry that we don't have a situation as well, like in the past, we talked about Black Friday on the day after Thanksgiving, where people are lined up at the doors hours in advance because we're going to be limiting, let's say, the first X number of people come in. So now we're going to have people all lined up outside, trying to get in, be the first ones there. You know, first come, first served. That's not, I think, what God would call us to do by no means.
So I want to thank you all so much for sharing some of your wisdom. It's striking how many, you know, cross-references among sacred scripture I heard in terms of love your neighbor as yourself and preserving human life, our interdependence. Imam Iqbal, when you talked about if you save one life, it's like you save all of humanity, that is also found in the Talmud. But I have to say that the well first and then you pray might be my favorite new Quran verse yet. So thank you so much for sharing that. We don't have too much time, but we're technically out of time, but I do want to open it up for questions. I'm noticing that Judd has unmuted himself, so I will let Judd speak first since he's our executive director.
Well, there's just a comment on Facebook. The spirit of abundance flowing from the faith leaders in this conversation is palpable, even amongst new challenges. So people on Facebook are deeply appreciative. And there were also some comments around, remember, even after this pandemic, that there's a lot of people dying of a lot of things that we can address. And so that a challenge for faith leaders to also engage those issues that people are still dying of, even when we come back from the pandemic. So,
that we not become tunnel vision.
Yes, that there are other issues we can address as faith leaders as well. So, but a lot of thanks and appreciation for the wisdom was shared on Facebook.
Thank you so much. I want to open up to questions or comments for Zoom. I'm going to try if you want to just, okay, Ruth Kurlansky. Yes, please. You're going to have to unmute yourself, or I'll unmute you.
Hi, Rabbi
Hi.
Nadia is our rabbi, and I just want to, and I love this panel. I want to ask what I hope is a simple, short answer question. When you go on Facebook Live, can anybody follow you? Can anybody watch it that doesn't even have a Facebook account? That's part one. And then the second part is, I do have a Facebook account and I can't find it. So how do you look for it?
You and Imam
when you're
Iqbal
using
are like...
Same question?
He's laughing, he's cracking up. Rabbi Wolk, it looked like you were ready to answer that.
So when I started doing the Facebook Live services, I had to decide if I was going to do it through my personal Facebook page or through the synagogue page. And I chose to do it through the synagogue page so that anybody who follows or who likes the synagogue can see it. You don't have to be friends with me in real life or on Facebook. You just have to follow Knesset Israel to be able to see it. And it pops up in your news feed at 8:30 in the morning when it goes on. So I would say I've spent a lot of time trying to explain to people how to get there. I'm not that great at techie, but I'm realizing that giving computer advice is a new form of pastoral care.
Beautifully said. Father
Ham. Yeah, one thought on that line. I don't have a tech background either. I have a lot of staff that do, but I do know after our live streaming, after our Facebooking, then it's downloaded and just placed on our website. So, for instance, people can watch our Sunday service all week long after the fact. So it's posted as a way to do that. That might be a help as well for Ruth. There's a way to post it on the website so you can access it anytime.
I want to invite everybody to come to Interfaith Paths to Peace Facebook page and like it because it's an awesome page. And then you can see this video, once it's not being live, you can still go and watch it. Or you can see the morning meditation devotional that we had this morning with Cantor David Lipp singing, and you have an opportunity to hear that. Or tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. we have Zen meditation. But if 9 a.m. isn't your thing, you can still go afterwards to the Facebook Live, to the Facebook account and watch that video. So you can test it out with our Facebook page if you would like, even if you're not like friends, but we would love for you to be our friend because we're friendly people. And then you'll get more information about the Iftar dinner on May 14th, as well as this Saturday, we are going to be having an interfaith panel on the sacred feminine and what each of our religious traditions have to say about mother wisdom and how we can understand that in light of it being Mother's Day weekend. So just a couple of tidbits. Judd, do you want to say anything else about other exciting events coming up on Interfaith Paths to Peace?
No, just deep thanks to the many, the clergy in Louisville are just, we are so blessed to have so many really deeply reflective, faithful, engaged clergy in our city, and this is just a taste of that. So I just want a deep bow to all of you and a appreciation for sharing your wisdom and insights with our community, and blessings on these coming months as you consider how to reopen or how to continue to be open as we've been challenged.
Yes, I definitely got some great insights from all of you. Thank you so much. Any last words or comments from our participants or panelists? Just opening it up. Final reflections, words before we stop being live on Facebook.
Just wanted to say thank you to everyone, IBP. You always bring us together. You know, a lot of times I did reach out to a few people when this first started, but I think you always do a great job to, keep us connected, even though, and we realize that once we are there, that, how much we like each other's company and like to hear each other's thoughts and words. And so just want to say thank you and appreciate it.
That's true. It is that great reminder when we can reconnect. So I want to thank all of you for your time, your commitment. Like us on Facebook. All right.
Thank you.
Blessings to everyone, and hope to see you at another upcoming event. Thank you, especially to our panelists.